Sarah, for that kind introduction. Thank you, everyone, for having us here. I'm going to introduce Christine Edwards now. Christine is a nationally recognized authority on financial services, corporate governance, and public company issues. Is a partner of Winston & Strawn, LLP, and heads the firm's bank regulatory practice. Ms. Edwards has extensive experience supervising complex transactions, internal investigations, and regulatory matters. Prior to joining Winston & Strawn in 2003, Ms. Edwards served for 3 years as Executive Vice President and Chief Legal Officer at Bank One, a predecessor company to J.P. Morgan Chase. Prior to that, for over 25 years, Ms. Edwards spent her career at J.P. Morgan Stanley, where she succeeded to the role as Executive Vice President and Chief Legal Officer of that company, the first woman to do so. It was there she achieved the distinction of becoming the first female GC on Wall Street. In 2010, Ms. Edwards joined the public company board of BMO Financial, a $760 billion asset banking institution in Toronto. She chairs the Nominating and Governance Committee and serves on the Compensation and Risk Committees. She also serves on the board of Rush University Medical Center in Chicago, chairs the Audit Committee, and serves on the Executive and Nominating and Governance Committees. Ms. Edwards serves on the leadership board of the U.S. Chamber's Center for Global Markets Competitiveness in D.C., and she's a frequent speaker and author on topics of governance and financial services. Thank you, Chris, for being here tonight.
I was afraid you were going to call me Christine all night.
It's Chris.
Only my dad used to call me that when he was really angry.
From now on, it's Chris, not even Ms. Edwards. It's Chris. So this is going to be a lot of fun. So Chris and I have spoken a few times, right? And we wanted to think about what we could draw from our respective careers to think about, what traits and behaviors have we tried to incorporate into our lives to help us enable our career progress. And we started calling them building blocks of a successful career. So that's what we're going to touch on tonight, with me doing some questioning and Chris doing some questioning back to me. So at the top of the list was courage, right? I think that might be an obvious one to most of us, but that rose certainly to the top of what we thought was essential to a successful career. So just to kick it off, Chris, why don't we step back in time a little bit, and when you started out, what was courage important? And tell us if your career sort of developed on its own, or if you felt like you were deliberate in how you chose to progress your career path.
Sure. And can everyone hear me? Is my mic on?
No. I can hear you because we're in the front seat. For those in the back, no.
No? Hello? Hello?
Is it flipped on the side yet?
I've got the green light. How about now? No.
It's being checked.
All right, it's being checked. Can you hear me if I talk without a mic?
No. All right. You need a mic.
Okay, so one of the things that Julie and I talked about is the fact that as we talk about our careers, we obviously are of a little bit of a generation difference between the two of us. So we thought it might be fun to talk a little bit about topics like courage. First, from my perspective, growing up on Wall Street as one of the earliest women in an executive position with Morgan Stanley. And then sort of what courage means now. Bring out the song.
For
Can you hear me now? No? But it looks great. All right. Does it have a long enough cord? Put it in between. Okay, that's a good idea. All right, there we go. Yay! So as I started thinking about what to talk about in terms of a career and courage, I decided that it might be appropriate to say that women of my generation, particularly for those who were women of Wall Street, had to be not only women of courage,
but also of vision. Because there were very few of us, and when we looked around, there were very few role models for us. So if you think about what does it take to think about a career path in an environment like that, where as women on Wall Street, we were in situations where during meetings we were asked to go get coffee for people. We interviewed for professional roles and were offered roles as office assistants. We missed out on a lot of conversations that took place in the men's room in between the meetings and so forth. So it was a different environment. So in order to succeed and demonstrate courage in an environment like that, my perspective was you really do need a career plan. And my career plans always turned out to be 2 years. Climbing up a corporate ladder at the time, 2 years seemed like an appropriate time frame for picking out what would be my next role, figuring out what I needed to do to qualify myself for that role, and then set about doing that, but at the same time talking to my manager, or my supervisor, or my boss at the time to say, I'm setting my sights on that position. I'm thinking that I have to do the following things in order to qualify myself for that. And is that sort of what you would think about as well? So you really had to set your sights on things that you believed would be terrific for accomplishing good things in your career. And it was really at that point that I became known as a fixer. I was sent into assignments to fix businesses, to evaluate what was going wrong, to correct processes. And that sort of catapulted me in a way in my career that was a little bit faster than others. And I decided at some point in my career that I wanted to go to law school. I went to law school at night while I was doing this finance career during the day. And after I became a lawyer, I became a trusted advisor to business people who were fixing things, because in order to fix things, you need to know sort of fundamentally, how does a business work? What are the key capital drivers? How do you analyze capital allocation processes? What are the key qualifications of people that should be in those roles? And so helping business people figure out those issues. And then what are the regulations that you need to think about? How do I accomplish this? How can I exit people who are not getting it? How can I recruit in the right people? So I sort of began the process of becoming a fixer as part of that career process. And I was really lucky, I think, in my career to have a bunch of firsts behind my career. The first woman to do this, that, and the other. It was funny though. It was very different then than it is now. I found out that I was the first female general counsel when a reporter called me about 3 months after I took the job. I didn't even realize it. There wasn't a whole lot of coverage for things like that in the business world. Now, in this environment, obviously, there's a lot more clarity around those issues. There's a lot more disclosure, and people follow those types of issues a lot more closely than they did at the time. So it was kind of a different environment, but I think with a little bit of courage and vision, I think you kind of figure out how to make a good career out of it. So should I pass this back to you? Oh no, I'm sorry. That's it. Yeah. So Julie, let's turn to your career, because I think as we were talking about our different career paths, I think one of the things that struck both of us is the fact that while I had responsibility for a number of lawyers all over the world and directed their activities generally from New York, you actually went to a lot of different international locations and built businesses there. So in terms of that substantial experience outside the U.S., tell us how how courage enters into the decision to leave your home country, to go to a foreign country, and to build a business reputation by doing that.
Courage is an important thing, right? You think about an expat career and it seems on the surface that courage is mandated at every step of the process, right? So when I look at my experience, I've worked on 4 continents in 20 years, lived in 3 continents and 6 major global cities in 20 years, right? So a lot of moves, a lot of those decisions to say, does this make sense at this point in time? Does this make sense for me personally? How does this fit into my broader vision of what I hope to achieve in my career? So there's a component of courage that sits there, but I find that courage rests more once you land. So for me, I was always kind of struck by the professional and personal curiosity of these new destinations and learning how the business would work in different geographies and seeing how people thought about the business and operated within the business in different jurisdictions and different territories. So for me, it wasn't so much courage at the outset of some of the decisions. It was more courage once I got there. So you land and you start going through your day-to-day life, and the courage to be an outsider and to really recognize that and to know it. The courage to not have the answers and to start to have to inform yourself about everything. The courage to need to adapt, but also to retain your voice. A courage to lead groups of people that maybe have been working together for a long time and have institutionalized what they do. So how do you bring courage on a daily basis to inject new ideas? So I'm a huge fan of courage. I think it's important for all of us, but for me, on the expat path, it's certainly been more in the day-to-day interaction with the environment around you, how you manage yourself, right? How you involve yourself with other people, where it's really resonated. And I think the expat career intensifies that in a lot of ways, and you become more aware of the necessity and the existence of your courage. But it's something that can be mobilized really anywhere. I think it's about an awareness of who you are in the landscape and how you can contribute. So we heard a little bit about Chris's bio, right? Financial services and law, and she's been involved in Washington, New York, and Chicago. But what we thought we'd do is it would be useful for people to hear a little bit about main inflection points in terms of when you look back on your career and you made good decisions at a time, or points in time where you felt like you really took a chance that made a difference in the story arc of your career. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I thought what I might do is talk a little bit about 2 inflection points, one early on in my career and one more recently. But I think that the message is really that thinking about your career from the perspective of getting experiences that universally help you for the rest of your career. And I think the first point of inflection would have been very early on in my career. Literally, I had taken a finance role and decided to go to law school at night. A position opened up in our government relations office. I was living in Maryland at the time, government relations office in DC, and literally had to talk my way into the job because the vice president at the time told me, well, we only take lawyers for this role. And I said, not a problem. I'm a 2nd-year law student, only have 2 more years to go. If I don't graduate from law school and if I don't pass the bar, you can fire me. So he cracked up laughing, but he ended up giving me the job. But if you think about the first 5 years of my career, or anyone's career, particularly if you're in a corporate role, the 4 corners of that business and the environment with your fellow business people, your colleagues, and so forth, that's sort of your universe in thinking about what it is that you need to pay attention to in your career. In Washington, literally it was the beginning of the Reagan administration. Out with the old, in with the new. Nothing in my civics lessons ever prepared me for the changes that you see happening in front of you in those types of roles in Washington, D.C. It's the seat of power. It's the congressional rotation between Republicans and Democrats and committee staff. It's the new legislation that is introduced. It is the way in which your company is regulated, and what are the what are the opinions behind those changes? What motivates those changes? Who are the people behind those decisions? And I spent 8 years in Washington, D.C. Once you've seen those and experienced those changes, you understand better how they can impact your business and how to help your decision-making process as a business person after that. So I would say that being in Washington, D.C. was a key inflection point for me. The other thing, just for me personally, it was the first time that I had women as peers, and it was absolutely terrific. Women in some of the regulatory agencies, women on Capitol Hill, women in the administration. We actually created an organization at the time that was called Women in Housing and Finance, and we literally could have the entire organization at one of these tables when we first started out. It's now still in place, and it's 750 people. They've capped the membership at that, and they call themselves WIHF because about 10 years ago they began to admit men because it was a very influential organization. So it was a lot of fun, and you recognize the value of collaboration and collegiality in Washington to try to get things done through the people and the context that you had. So I would say that was the first major inflection point. The second inflection point really came after I retired from Morgan Stanley. I'd spent 30 years, actually, with the organization, the last 12 of which was as Executive Vice President and Chief Legal Officer. So I left Morgan Stanley, retired, and started a job as General Counsel of Bank One at the time that Jamie Dimon had just been recruited to be the chairman and CEO. It was a financial turnaround. It was the regulators had imposed a cease and desist on the organization at the holding company level. And literally, the team of people that were recruited in to manage those issues did not know from day to day whether we were going to make it or not. It was a scary process, and yet underlying some of the problem areas were businesses that were extraordinarily strong, people who were incredibly bright and talented. And it was a venerable Chicago institution. So we were very, very motivated. Spent 3 years doing that, and at the time that the kind of the light at the end of the tunnel, which was not a train, we saw, the company was going to merge with J.P. Morgan Chase in New York, and I didn't want to go back to New York. But I say that those 3 years were the most incredible learning experiences in my career because, it was challenging, it was scary, and it was a management team that really spent 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for literally almost 2 years working on turning around what was the 8th largest bank in the United States at the time. So those were 2 key inflection points. Very, very different experiences, but really terrific teaching moments. So that was good. You wanted to talk a little bit about.
So tell us a little bit about kind of moving into your first board seat type of opportunity, right? We know you've written a paper on guidance in terms of getting your first board. Tell us a little bit about the courage associated with seeking out and finding your first board opportunity. And then maybe also touch on what's some advice that you think people often miss in terms of their own ability to find board opportunities.
So this is a topic that I think a lot of you in this room might be interested in, because a number of you either serve on boards, you deal with your own board of directors, or you have aspirations at some point about thinking about going on a board. And for me, the courage was not so much to respond to the recruitment by Bank of Montreal to go on their board. I was absolutely thrilled. The key challenge for me was getting it approved by my law firm. It's very complicated, conflicts of interest, client receptivity, things like that. But I thought it was really wonderful, because I went to one of the mentors that I have in the firm, kind of an older partner who just has been terrific to me, and I explained to him what I wanted to do. I want to go on a board of a public company, and I understand that I need to get the approval of my firm in order to do this. And I said, here are the reasons why I think it would be a good thing, and here's why I think I'm qualified, and so I go through this whole thing, and he kind of looks at me and he sits back like learned counsel normally do, and he kind of looks at me sideways and he says to me, well, Chris, my advice to you is just to remember the old adage that sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. He said, tell the firm that that the company is going to be announcing that you're joining the board, and that you wanted to let them know in advance of the press release going out. And now I took a lot of his advice, but I didn't take all of it. I actually did follow the rules and but I had a very different attitude about the way that I asked for permission after having that conversation with him than if I hadn't. And it was extraordinarily helpful to me. But the other lesson is make sure that you have the endorsement of your CEO, your board, whoever it is that will be involved in your decision to go on a board, because it will be time away from your job. But I think it's enormously helpful to people to have that board experience. It provides, boards aren't management, they oversee management, and thinking about strategically the types of things that you want to ask management in those board meetings is incredibly helpful, and I think it's a good thing for people. So just two other quick notes of advice on boards is that, number one, make sure that you understand what boards actually do. Some people actually think that they want to go on boards, and when they go through a process, I know you're going to have a session here in the next month or so about going on boards. Listen very carefully, because some people listen to what it is that boards do and decide, that's really not for me. I really don't want to do that. Or be careful about the types of boards that you want to go on. I talk about people who want to go on large public company boards. Well, you have a very different experience on a large public company board than if you're going to go on a smaller public company board or a private board. You're much more interactive with management, you're much more involved in decision making in that type of a board, or in a large not-for-profit. So I think those are the types of things that you have to think about. And the other thing is learn everything you can about the both formal and informal way in which director candidates are selected by boards. Knowing everything that you can about how to get into those pipelines is probably the key aspect of your success in getting on a board. So I'm happy to talk about that more, but I think those are some of the things that you should think about. So, Julie, we're still talking about courage, and we've talked about a lot of different types of courage, but I think one of the things is how do you come about having courage? Do you get your courage naturally, or has there been a particular mentor or family member or friend that you've used to help you with gaining courage over your career?
Yeah, you know, I'm one of those people that's lucky enough to say they have amazing parents, and I think that's just been so foundational for me. I remember my parents really never demonstrating hesitation around decision making, especially when it came to taking kind of healthy risks, right, for your life and your well-being and your career. So that I think is pretty integral to how I've just grown up and seen things over time. I also would watch my dad a lot growing up. So my father played professional golf when I was in my younger years, and I would see him at tournaments, and I'd see him go out sort of onto the course with grace and control and seemingly very relaxed, right? I guess that's an inherent trait of some golfers, right? And he would leave the course, no matter what the round was, equally as relaxed and equally as graceful. And you know, it struck me, and I remember seeing him time and time again doing that. And it's upon reflection that I really appreciate what he was doing each of those times he stepped out on the course, right? He was taking a personal risk in terms of whether he would play well that day or not play so well. And whatever happened, he was up again the next day, going about the process and trying to improve upon whatever the play the previous day looked like. So, you know, I think for me, seeing that over time and then being in a household where we were encouraged to always try again, go for it, try again, go for it, try again, without much drama around the failure part, but a lot of enthusiasm around the try again piece has been extraordinarily helpful. And I'm not sure if it came naturally or a bit of it came naturally, but certainly that promotion of that type of attitude over the years has been instrumental and now really has put me in a position where I'm drawn towards the risk. So I think once you do a couple of these big career moves, but equally geographic moves, you become more confident in your skill set, right? In a job, you become more well-versed, you learn the company more, you're more stable. On the geographic challenges, you figure out, you know what, I can figure out how to control electricity when I get to company X, Y, or Z, right? I can figure out how to set up my phone. I can figure out how to develop a community and have friends. So the confidence perpetuates and builds on itself, and now I find myself seeking out those challenges and opportunities. So the next building block we talked about was balance. So we covered courage from a lot of different facets and risk-taking, and balance is what we landed on as a second building block. And when we were talking, we said, of course, we've got work, right, as a component of our life, but what else do we have? And we landed upon family, reputation, and professional organizations. So from a family perspective, Chris, there is a question that seems to be debated forever around, can you have it all? And hearing about your career is so inspiring, right, for many of us, and certainly personally for me. What can you tell us about that? And what can you share that you found as a common misconception around your ability to have a successful career and a successful family life?
Yeah, well, I think it's been debated for years whether, particularly women, debate whether you can have it all, and the all being a career and family and a balanced life. And I think the generation of women that I belong to truly believe that you couldn't have it all. They believe that if you had a career, particularly a professional career, that you were sacrificing family life because of the amount of time that you have to devote to a career. And I can't tell you the amount of guilt for women like me that we would carry this around, because of course, and this is the phrase that I was using with Julie all the time, because we were absolutely convinced that we would all raise a generation of axe murderers for kids, right? I mean, that's what we thought. We thought that our kids were going to be axe murderers because we weren't there, we weren't good mothers, we weren't doing the right thing, we were sacrificing our family for our careers. So, geez, you know, what's going to happen with that? As it turns out, we didn't have axe murderers. I was just telling Julie that my daughter's a physician. My son just did his MBA at Booth, and he's in finance, so a future FEI member. And they're great kids. I think the difference was, first of all, I've been married to the same man for 44 years, and he's the love of my life, and he's a partner. And we have made decisions in our family life and our career together, and that has been a rock-solid foundation for me, and I couldn't have done it without that. But not everyone has that. So I tell people, create your circle. Create your personal board of directors is something that people like to talk about now, but 2 or 3 people who you're close to, who you admire what they've done. They will tell you what you need to hear and what you need to know, and they're from different parts of your life, and use them to help you think about career direction and balance in your life, because while that next promotion that you think is going to be absolutely terrific, you need to kind of level set with other people, and I think it's really important to do that, because you do need balance in your life. You can't do everything work-related and expect that you're going to be well balanced in your family life. There are some wonderful stories, though, that you can tell. I mean, I remember saying to my assistant in every role that I had, if any of my kids call, it's an emergency. Come get me, because I want to take those calls. Even if it's not an emergency, I want them to know that they can pick up the phone and call me just like any other mom. And I was telling Julie this story. I was sitting in a boardroom, my board, making a presentation as the general counsel of the company. I'm giving them the latest update on one of the bet the bank type litigation matters. And the boardroom door opens up. My secretary comes in. She's got a little note. She hands me the note. I open it up. Your daughter's on the phone. I close the note. I said, I need to take this call. And I said to my deputy of litigation, can you take the report from here? Which, of course, he did. Walk out of the room, go answer the phone. My daughter can't find her soccer shin guards. You know? But she knew she could call me. She's, of course, here in Illinois. I'm in Manhattan, but I'm telling her where to find her shin guards. I go back into the boardroom, very, very concerned, look on my face, sat down, and I said to my director, now where are we? And so you kind of do, and that's balance, right? My daughter knew that she could call me, but it's also a matter of prioritization and making sure that you've got, so when I was with my children, I was all about my children, and they knew that. And I think that was kind of the difference between the way that women who didn't believe that you could have a profession and work after your children were born, and women who actually did that. I think that's kind of the way that we compensated. When we were around our kids, we weren't texting, we weren't, talking to, we were concentrating on our kids, and it's a way to achieve balance. So, where are we going to next?
We're going to Julie with the 4-year-old and how she copes with balance.
Oh, that's right. And I was going to say, Julie, what do I know? You've got a 4-year-old. You're just right in the midst of all this. How do you do balance?
It's like a flashback for Chris back to the days of 4-year-old. So this morning I had one of those mornings where Lucinda insisted on wearing a swimsuit to school in January. She's very convincing. I almost rolled over and gave in, but I restrained. For me, I think there's common challenges, right? There have been a lot of improvements, I think, for women on the surface around balancing work and family life, and for men as well. But I think when you get under the surface of it, we're still dealing with priority setting, right? Managing a multidimensional life, judgment. There's still a judgment that comes along with all of it. Certainly the challenge of being present. I think now, as we're so technology enabled, men and women, and it's difficult to be disciplined enough to give your attention into the buckets where it should be at certain periods of time. So I think there's that element of it. And, you know, we haven't seen the progress, I think, on a broad basis that we hope that we would around female representation on boards, equal pay, etc. So all of that is evolving. I would love to see some of it evolve at a faster pace, but while I think some of the challenges have been improved upon, we still have a long way to go, and the inherent aspects of self-care remain for all of us, I think, as parents, not just women. And we're equally moving into a dynamic that some of my peers are facing now, where we're not only going to be taking care of children, but equally taking care of our parents. And I think we're reading more and more about the dilemma that organizations have, and people that run teams like I do, around how you cope with employees that have got child obligations, parental obligations. It's a heavy load for individuals. So, you know, I really try and do my part in terms of balance, as disciplined as I can be in terms of my personal, but in my professional sphere, I take it really seriously to try to be sensitive to what people are dealing with, and where I can make changes that are impactful for the benefit of people having a clear mind, I certainly try to do that. So reputation, we talked about balance and family. Maybe we can segue here into reputation a little bit. Chris, one of your articles that you wrote that caught our attention was Directors Beware, the New Face of Reputational Risk. We all know that it takes us years, maybe lifetime, to build reputations, but we can lose a good reputation in a minute. So what can you tell us about protecting our reputation and what we should keep in mind in terms of the importance of why you chose to write about reputational risk?
Yeah, well, the context of that article really was thinking about the information security breach circumstance at large companies. And one moment you're a very well-regarded U.S. public company, and the next minute you have a crisis of reputation because your information has been hacked, you didn't respond to it quickly enough, you didn't respond to reporters fast enough, and you haven't isolated what it is that the information contains, so you don't know how to advise your vendors, your customers, your employees, members of management, and your board. So it is a key issue, I think, for boards of directors to think about. But as a board member, you have a reputation. And if you think about it, once you are considered as a director candidate to go on a board, it's because you've had building blocks that you've built of your own reputation. And your building blocks will be added to the other building blocks of the reputations of the individuals around the boardroom, the other directors. And so when you think about joining a board, you need to think about and really covet and protect your reputation by first thinking about what's the reputation of the other individuals in that boardroom? Are they consistent with mine? Am I comfortable with the way that they make decisions? Are these the type of people that I want to be in a foxhole with? Because quite frankly, if something goes wrong at the company and it becomes a reputational risk, the last thing that you want to have happen as a board is for one director to come in and say, this is enough, I'm out of here, I want to resign from the board. Well, resigning from the board in the middle of an emergency is not good. So you want to think about those factors ahead of time, and a lot of it is thinking about it from the perspective of preserving your reputation, your building blocks of your own reputation. So, now Julie, we've talked about you've been moving from one country to the next. With each move, you've had to begin anew, to establish a new reputation. How does that work? How have you done that?
You know, I think in terms of sort of managing your reputation within your organization as you make these moves, it's small. Organizations are oftentimes a lot smaller than we may believe that they are on the surface. And I think if you can establish the right connection points across your organization and put yourself in a position to become what I've always had as my objective is to be the voice of the region, you get to a place where you become branded and well known as a resource in that area. And I think you can ultimately enable more communication around what you're doing, what you've created, what you're building in your territory, because you're relied upon to be the voice of that territory. So for me, reputation building within an organization while I've moved has largely been about teeing up the right connection points, making sure that I try to transform myself into the voice of the region to be relied upon and listened to on that basis.
So one of the things, so we're going to move on now to the role of professional organizations, and it occurs to me that we're speaking to one. So you all know the value of professional organizations. I too am a real believer in getting involved in professional organizations, both with my profession as a lawyer, as a board member. I've been very actively involved in the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in Washington, D.C. for a number of years, and trade associations. I like that type of work because I think it helps me do a better job. It gives me more perspective, but the people that you meet, the contacts that you make, I think are absolutely terrific. Julie, do you find the same thing? Are you finding that engaging in professional organizations is helping you with each one of these transitions that you've made in your career?
Absolutely. I mean, Chicago really stands out too as a unique city in terms of the availability, the accessibility, the healthy demands, I think, that are placed on individuals to be engaged and visible in the business community. So I found it fantastic and a great way to localize and get to know the city. So I've certainly appreciated every opportunity I've had to begin to get involved. And I think what I try to really prioritize around the professional organizations is looking at where I can find a good intersection between what interests me personally and where I can develop professionally. And I feel like that's kind of the chemistry and the recipe for me that enables me to give back into the organizations as I should.
Well, the other thing that I can add to this, by the way, is that I was very actively involved in external organizations as well when I was in Washington, D.C., and you heard that was a long time ago. But the fun part about that is that many of the people that I started out working with in Washington, D.C., those many years ago, are now heads of agencies. They're the vice chair of the Federal Reserve. They are, the chair of the chairman of the SEC. And so you find that the types of contacts and relationships that you build early on in your career, keep pursuing those. Stay up to date with those people because they really do help you along. And as your career is moving along, so is theirs, and it's great to have those contacts.
So we're in 3 of 4, so stick with us a few more minutes. The third building block's tenacity. Chris, what have you found in terms of persistence, determination? Did you discover this in yourself? Did you do work on it deliberately? What's your take on tenacity?
Okay, so tenacity, I'm going to have a short answer. I grew up with 2 older brothers, and having 2 older brothers taught me at a very young age how to be tenacious. And the other lesson that I learned from 2 older brothers is never cry in front of a boy.
You got that nailed, right?
So, Julie, just a different take on tenacity. Got a lot going on in today's world. At our table up here, we were talking about some of the goings-on in the last couple of days in Washington, D.C. A lot of stuff. And then you consider the pace of change in today's environment. How do you develop tenacity in the people that you lead?
It's interesting. I really try to keep things simple. I think my view on this is simplify and maximize. So when I look at my teams, I really talk a lot about know what you need to do and do it well, right? Point 1. And point 2, really know who you are and know what you can maximize. Right? And I think that helps to kind of decloud and keep people attached and assigned to what needs to get done, but equally attached and focused on what makes them unique and what makes them good and how can they continue to leverage that over time. So focus is certainly a challenge, but I try to get at it through simplification. And lastly, we're at humor, okay, number 4 on the list. So we all know that humor does a lot of healthy things, right? It supports positive thoughts. It helps us create a happier environment. It certainly allows us to break down barriers and hey, to have fun, right? We should have fun through all of this. So just in closing, we're going to do a quick little lightning round here. Chris, can you talk to us a little bit about an example where humor has really helped you in the workplace and made a difference in terms of your own success?
Yeah, I thought of one example that is kind of universal for people as they're growing up in their careers. I happened to be a newly minted general counsel at the time and was younger than the 5 deputy general counsels who reported to me at the time. So it was terrific. I started a practice of having weekly staff meetings, which were essentially just intended to let everyone know what everyone else was working on. Just hit the high points, no need to spend an hour, just 20 minutes, whatever. But every week, just let my assistant, who would create the agenda for the meeting, know what your topic is going to be. So we circulate the topics ahead of time, come in, have a 20-minute meeting, done. So that was terrific, except that there was one deputy general counsel who I believe was maybe a general counsel wannabe. I think he felt that he should have gotten the role. Never came up with a topic. No topics. Nope, nothing this week. Nope, nothing this week. And of course, not only did I notice this, of course, all the rest of the deputy general counsels noticed it as well. So there I was. What am I going to do? I mean, I can't do my practices. I want to have these meetings. So I made up a topic for him. And unbeknownst to him, I put it on the list. And I wrote it down because I forget from year to year what I actually, I said that, let's see, where is it? The topic was, describe the impact of federal preemption of securities laws on the state's rule against perpetuities. I mean, it's just an outrageous topic, right? So when I circulated the agenda, everybody knew what was going on, including him, and nobody knew what was going to happen. So we go into the conference room, everybody sits down, and he's not there. So door closes, start the meeting. 5 minutes later, he comes in carrying 14 leather-bound, those leather, kind of lawyer books, into the room, and he drops them on the table, and he said, "Sorry I'm so late, but I was up all night long researching my topic." And of course, everybody in the room laughs. It was a terrific way to break the ice. He sat down, and from there on, we had topics from him thereafter. So, I mean, it was a way to use humor to break the ice and to say it's not okay to not have, not contribute as part of the team. So that was my one attempt at humor. But Julie, I mean, sometimes humor can be a little iffy, right? I mean, and particularly today in the #MeToo environment, and you must be, you have to think about everything. It can be a little dicey, and you've been in jurisdictions where they may not understand American humor. How do you handle humor in a situation like Japan or Australia or other countries?
Yeah, I had a funny dinner in Madrid one evening when I first assumed the leadership role at Chubb, and I was living in London. I was in Madrid at a beautiful Spanish dinner. The table's full of wine. There's beautiful seafood and meats, and We had clients there and colleagues both, and you know, we're right in the heart of the discussion. Things are flowing nicely. We're speaking in Spanish. And I asked for something across the table, and it was a total misstep. It's completely the wrong word. It ends up being a really foul Spanish word. So I'm humiliated at doing this and immediately recognize my mistake. And the table around me just starts laughing, right? And these are moments where we talked about breaking the ice with humor, right? That just transformed the relationships with my colleagues, but equally with the clients, to be in a position of weakness, right? To be able to have some self-deprecation. So I found in all the countries I've worked in that, you know, what is funny may be different in different countries, but humor is universal. And it's been a huge tool that I've used very joyfully to build relationships and to have people feel more comfortable with me, and equally for me to feel more comfortable with them. So I say go for it with the humor, just be careful.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I think that's about it, right? I was going to ask you one final question as we close. Do you have a motto, Chris, that you live by?
Well, I have two, actually. The first being tempus fugit, and time flies and you need to live life to the fullest. And so that's probably my newest, best motto. And the second would be, whenever Sarah Saratsky picks up the phone and calls you, you do whatever she asks.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Have a nice evening.